well, thank you all for having me. And of course, I'm meteorologist David Koeller from 6 News. And I will preface this by saying that most of the time I'm giving these sort of presentations, I'm talking to 3rd graders. So, you still are.
We won't disappoint you, yeah.
Sit on the carpet.
If it seems too simple or it seems like it's really common sense, I apologize, but hopefully we can learn something here. And if you don't learn anything, ask me questions until you do learn something. So of course we're talking about outdoor weather safety and in particular lightning because of that unfortunate lightning strike that happened last year. And so I'm going to kind of break down what causes thunderstorms, lightning, how do you stay safe from lightning when you're outside, and perhaps more importantly, how do you plan around it? Because the best way to stay safe is just to know that it's coming, because then you can get out of the way. Of course, that's our weather team at 6 News. Rusty Lord, he's been our chief meteorologist for a long time. Emily Roller joined us a few years ago. Jade Steffens just joined us last summer, and Jarrett Lansford joined us a couple of years ago. So Rusty and I have been there the longest at this point. But of course, this is the type of weather that we want to see. This is what we want to see. Blue skies, sunshine, get out on the trails, get in a good bike ride, enjoy the nice weather. But of course, we know it can quickly go from that to something a little more like this. Pretty much like that. Here in Nebraska, Iowa, really all across the Midwest, we have these huge weather swings, and sometimes it seems like they just come out of the blue. So really want to talk about what the most dangerous weather is that you're going to face when you're outside. And it's not necessarily represented by the number of fatalities, but I did want to bring this up because heat is generally the biggest weather killer here in the United States. It's the hot weather during the summer. People don't really realize it's sneaking up on them, and then they succumb to some sort of heat illness, a stroke, something like that. But the most dangerous thing you run into on bikes is generally lightning, and that's why we're here talking about that. It's going to be the most common thing that you're going to have to seek shelter from. Of course, you have tornadoes, hail, and all that kind of stuff in the Midwest, but that also all comes with lightning. So anytime there's a storm, you're going to end up with that lightning. And all right, it did that to me last time. The activity that generally has the most fatalities when it comes to lightning is, believe it or not, boating and fishing. So it's not so much your outdoor recreation that tends to have issues like that, but it's like running and biking. It tends to be a lot of water-related activities that have a lot of lightning fatalities. Let me see if I can get back to where I was and see if it doesn't do that again. Wow, okay.
Got a tough spot in there.
Worked when I was doing it earlier.
That's technology for you.
Yeah. I will just go ahead and skip past that and see if it continues to work after that.
Why, can I ask you something? Why is it because nothing else is around for it to strike, and you're the only thing?
In terms of the lightning strikes on the water, that's probably part of it.
Water's a really good conductor.
Because on the trail, I think.
Yeah, you're the high points or something.
Is there a video there? Or?
Yeah, there is a video there, and it
Looks
just
like it's not finding it.
doesn't want to play it.
That day, there really wasn't any lightning at all. And there really wasn't any real mean-looking clouds even that day. But there was one lightning storm.
Over in Glenwood, there was a lot of lightning.
Over 10 miles.
Oh, is that right?
There was quite a bit as we were going
There
there.
was in Glenwood, I was over there, and it's pouring and thundering.
Tonight?
No,
Oh,
that day.
that day, oh, wow.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm just gonna see if I don't skip those slides and keep going.
Skip the bad one.
What I was trying to show you was that the activities that have the most lightning-related fatalities are it's boating, fishing, and then soccer and golf.
Wow.
I know that cycling has its own category because you don't really hear about that all that often, but I think it generally gets lumped in with other outdoor sports. But in terms of where those occur, Florida, Georgia, and Texas have the most lightning-related fatalities every year. In the last decade, Nebraska has had 1, and Iowa has had 2, while Florida and Texas have had on the order of 50 to 60. I don't remember the exact
Wow.
number there.
Wow.
I would like to think that's because here in the Midwest, we respect the weather a little bit more, but it probably has to do with more along the lines of those big coastlines on those states and the fact that they have a whole lot more people in
Yeah,
them.
yeah.
But over the last 20, 30 years, the number of fatalities from lightning strikes has been decreasing at a pretty steady rate. And National Weather Service and other research agencies believe it's because of the amount of outreach that they've been doing, the amount of literature and the amount of information that we've been able to get out to people, and the fact that people are more informed for the most part when it comes to the weather so that they are able to get out of the way. At least that's what we hope.
Better prediction?
Yeah,
basically?
better predictions, things like that. However, I want to talk about the fact that only about 10% of people that are hit by lightning actually die. The other 90% end up with potentially life-changing injuries, and that is a huge deal in and of itself because it can completely change the way you have to live your life and perhaps prevent you from riding your bike ever again. And so we want to prevent that from happening as well, even though most lightning strikes aren't actually fatal, at least here in the United States. So a little bit about where does that lightning come from? So for the most part, we have these big, large, we call them cumulonimbus. You've probably heard that term before, thunderstorms. And there's a lot of energy in those storms. There's a lot of wind moving things around, and so you get the water droplets, you get the hailstones, you get little ice crystals, all of that's getting bashed against each other round and round inside that storm, and it builds up a static charge, just like you do when you scoot across the carpet when the air is really dry. And it builds up a really large static charge. Apparently none of my videos are going to work, so that's cool. It builds up that really large static charge, and once it gets to a certain point, that charge is large enough that it's able to jump from the cloud to the ground. So you think when you go over and you touch the doorknob and you get that little spark between your hand and the doorknob, you're not actually touching it when that electricity makes the little arc right there. And you can feel that little jolt when that happens. That's how much charge it takes to make that little jump. So you think about how much electric charge it takes to make the jump from the cloud all the way to the ground, and that's why lightning becomes then so dangerous. There's several different types of lightning, and I'm just going to show you a picture of it, but I don't think it's going to show up.
Half the strokes around here are ground to cloud.
Who can tell me, maybe what some of those different types of lightning are off the top of your head? Anybody?
Heat lightning.
Okay, so heat lightning is
Cloud to cloud.
not a type of lightning. It is lightning, but it's lightning that's so far at the distance you can't see the cloud that it's in. Did somebody say something
Ball
else?
lightning.
Ball lightning? Yeah, that is a type of lightning. I've never actually seen it, but it exists, and I would certainly like to see it one day. We have also what we call cloud to ground, so that's those big bolts that you see from the cloud jumping from the base of the cloud down to the ground. We have cloud to cloud, so that's inside of the thunderstorm. And then we have cloud to air, where the lightning starts inside of the thunderstorm and actually shoots out the side. And that can turn into one of the most dangerous types of lightning strikes. And those are, we call them, as meteorologists, they're positive lightning strikes because they start from the top of the cloud and they build a positive charge. And because it's traveling from the very top of the cloud all the way to the ground, it has an enormous charge with it, also known as the bolts from the blue. Those are the types of lightning that can travel up to 10 miles from the storm. Now this is playing off of YouTube, so that's why it's maybe working. So there you can see in this particular thunderstorm a lot of examples of that lightning shooting out the side of the thunderstorm. So it doesn't just go up or down, it doesn't go to the ground, it doesn't go from another cloud, it completely shoots all the way out the side of the storm. And then in other cases you can see that lightning actually arcing from the top of the storm down to the ground a good distance away from where any rain or hail might be. So like there in that case, you can see the lightning shooting way off to the side of the storm. So one of the things that we always say is if you can hear thunder, you're close enough to be hit by lightning. And that's why, because not all of the lightning stays inside of the storm. It can travel a really far distance outside of the thunderstorm, and those are the bolts that are the most dangerous. Those are the bolts that are typically powerful enough to kill anybody that they hit, unfortunately. So, you know, it's kind of cheesy, but the National Weather Service has this slogan, when thunder roars, head indoors. And, you know, because you can hear that thunder, you're probably close enough to be hit by lightning. And storms generally don't move all that quickly. They can, but they're not usually moving that quickly. So if you can hear thunder, it's close enough that you could be hit, and it's probably going to be close enough for a while, so you need to give that storm time to move away. So they come up with that 30-minute time window that everybody at the pool hates. But you have to give that storm time to get far enough away that that lightning risk is coming down, so that it's not going to arc out of the storm and hit you, even though it seems like it's far, far away. So, you know, what do we do trying to get ready for maybe a big bike ride, or just, you know, any ride any day? Just keep up with the forecast. That's the best way to stay informed. Is there a chance for storms today or tomorrow or 3 days from now? If there is, you know, keep visiting that forecast and check the points along whatever route you're doing. If it's a 10-mile route, you probably don't have to check every point, but if you're going on a big 60, 70-mile bike ride, you're going to check the forecast at both ends of that ride to make sure it's looking good. There's a lot of ways you can check in on that forecast. Of course, I'm going to vote for check in with us on TV. And for the most part, when you check in with a local meteorologist on whatever media outlet you want to look at, it's probably going to be a good forecast because that's their job to forecast for that particular area. You can use weather apps, but I want to caution on those, because especially the generic ones, the ones that come on your phone, the ones that come from AccuWeather or the Weather Channel or things like that, the forecasts in those apps are built by computers. The forecasts on our apps are from us. Unfortunately, it's only for Omaha, so if you are somewhere outside of Omaha, then your best bet is probably to go to the National Weather Service. And they have, you know, offices all over the country building that forecast every single day. So it's a forecast made by a person, not by a computer. And that's generally going to be a little bit more accurate than just those computer-generated forecasts. Those can be helpful, but they're not always going to be quite as accurate as perhaps one that's been looked over by a person first. So you can watch us on TV, you can download our app. You don't have to download our app, you can download whoever's app that you want, but don't tell my bosses I said that. And then if you go to the National Weather Service, you'll see that forecast there, and pull this over. And you can get a forecast for pretty much anywhere in the country. You just go to their website, which is weather.gov, and then you can click on the map anywhere you want to go, and they have point forecasts for anybody. So if you want to go out to Columbus, there's the forecast they have, and if you want to look at a chart for like the entire day, they have that forecast there. You might have to study a little bit to figure out everything there. That's in that particular forecast, but this part's pretty easy. You can just kind of scan it through and see, well, there's a chance for showers tomorrow, but the rest of the week looks like it's going to be dry.
You know, when I'm out riding, I rely on radar scope.
Yep.
I've got the paper, and that seems to be pretty good, because I've got where I can detect lightning and stuff like that. So the thing that I see a lot of time is a lot of the radar and stuff. It's the same radar I use off of radar scope. Some of the local stations will use for their radar.
Yep. And that's part of staying aware, staying weather aware on when you're out on that ride. So if there's a chance for storms and you know that, you go out and you can see the sky is clear and you start your ride, make sure you have a way to stay up to date on the weather. Make sure you have a way to get weather alerts, whether it's about severe weather, whether it's about lightning from an app or something like that. Check that weather radar to make sure your route is clear. And if you see some storms on the radar, try to see which way they're moving, how quickly they're moving, if they're moving toward your route. And if they are moving toward your route, then maybe you delay starting until they pass by. And if you're already out on the routes, keep an eye on the sky, watch for those dark clouds, things like that. And if you hear the thunder, then you know it's time to probably take shelter. So checking on the radar, you mentioned Radar Scope. Yes, that is a good app. It is a paid app, but it gives you the high resolution radar. A lot of national weather apps, the built-in weather apps, even our weather app, have what's called a composite radar, which is good. You can see anywhere in the country on it. But the Radar Scope and Radar Omega, My Radar, these are apps that will show you your local radar site so that you can get a better resolution on those storms, get a better idea which way they're moving. Unfortunately, they're not all free, but if you want a good radar app, those are what I would recommend. The only weather app that I have on my phone is Radar Scope, because that's what I use to track rain as it's moving through the storms. I've been watching the thunderstorms down in Kansas City because my parents have been under a tornado watch this evening. So I've been using that to keep track of them. And it gives you your location. It kind of looks like that. It shows you where you are on the map.
We only have so many radars, so I mean, they're not all,
Unfortunately.
they're probably like, one every so many 100 miles, right?
Yeah, there's about 120 or so across the country.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they don't cover everywhere equally, unfortunately, but we have one here in Omaha, so it covers the city, the metro area really, really well.
Yeah, and I like, it also shows up, you can switch it to hail mode to see if you got some of that coming up.
Yeah.
And the other, I noticed about my radar, that picks up the lighter rain a lot better than the radar scope. If there's like today we had a light drizzle, my radar scope doesn't pick it up. But my radar does pick up that.
If you go into the advanced settings and change the color table, it does.
Yeah. Well, you have to show me that.
When you're out on the ride, you check the radar, you see there might be something off in the distance, you go ahead and start your ride. Just keep an eye on the clouds. If you're seeing those wispy cirrus clouds on the side there, those are generally considered fair weather clouds. You're probably in the good. You see some of these puffy cumulus clouds, generally also considered fair weather clouds. Probably not going to have any issues from those, but if they start getting taller, they start getting darker, you start getting the cumulonimbus clouds there, that's when you want to start paying attention, start thinking, well, maybe do I need to turn around? Do I need to end the ride early? Something like that. This is what they look like from a distance. As they get up a little bit closer, of course, they'll start to look kind of obscure the sky, so you won't be able to see all of the features. But I'm guilty of going on a ride and then getting surprised by a storm. Does anybody ride to the Bike MS ride in Kansas City? No? In past? Okay. All right. So Bike MS is the biggest ride that I do every year. And last year we started the ride, and there was a storm that wasn't supposed to be there out west of Lawrence, Kansas. And we started the ride, and I was looking off to the west, and I saw those cumulonimbus clouds out in the distance, and I was like, well, that doesn't look good. we kept riding because, the ride had started, everybody was out on the course, there was almost 1,000 of us out there, and it just kept getting closer and closer, and at some point I was like, okay, I was telling my dad, we gotta stop, this is coming at us, we gotta stop, and it kind of rolled on over us. That's the approach. You can see what's called the anvil. So when you see the top of the thunderstorm spreading out like that, kind of hits the top of the unstable part of the atmosphere and starts to spread out. Have you seen a blacksmithing anvil?
Yeah.
So that's where it gets that name, because it has that shape. As the updraft, the cloud hits the top of the unstable part of the atmosphere, it begins to just spread out. And so that kind of gives you an idea of which direction the storm's moving. And if that is spreading your direction from the thunderstorm, it's probably moving in your direction. And it starts to look like that. You get those little waves in it, the modest clouds they're called. That'll be a sign that it has some pretty intense activity, a lot of turbulence in it.
What were those called?
Anvils?
No,
The Bamanas. Yeah. And this part of the cloud can actually help to spread the lightning out ahead of the thunderstorm. So that's when you can get those lightning strikes that are 10, 12 miles ahead of the actual rain, because the lightning can travel through that cloud and then come to the ground way out ahead of the storm.
Wow.
And you'll see those clouds kind of getting darker and lower as it gets closer to you. That, I heard somebody say shelf cloud. There's your shelf cloud right there.
Yeah.
That's usually the leading edge of gusty winds, the heavier rain. If you're talking about a severe thunderstorm, that's probably the leading edge of where you'll see those really strong wind gusts that are blowing down trees and things like that. And then right over here, you can see a rain shaft, perhaps even a hail shaft right there, so that it's harder to see on this TV than it is on my computer, but you can see there's a sharp line right there where it goes from, you can see the clouds to just a gray, kind of gray obscured area. That's that rain shaft. So that's something you're going to try to avoid, but obviously this is coming at you. This is from the Bike MS ride.
Wow.
You're going to want to try and find somewhere to shelter. So there's really nowhere that is a safe spot when you're outside in a thunderstorm.
How's the
So-
shelf? Go ahead.
So do you go for a ditch? You don't go for a tree?
Right. Right.
What, nothing to do?
We're getting there.
Oh.
On your path.
So how-
Sorry, he's had his hand up, yeah.
The question is just, the day we had our incident, that was September 16th.
Yeah.
And our ride was starting at 8 in the morning, so it's like, it's just kind of just overcast, so we didn't have like those telltale signs of what a whole day when energy and
Yeah.
stuff built, because I was riding with Bonnie, we were just coming through the Baxter Arena gate, and suddenly, it was like, that was lightning. And none of us had a forecast, because generally we wouldn't have had 16 people out there thinking about going rides. It's like, that morning just gave us, is there something different we need to look at when it's that morning ride? Because that tends to be a lot of our Saturday morning ride.
I don't remember that day in particular, but there are, situations where you don't always get a really well-defined thunderstorm line.
There was no black clouds, everything was kind of uniformish.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was.
Unfortunately, in that situation, there is not a whole lot that you can look at and say, oh yeah, that's a thunderstorm. That's a situation where you kind of have to use radar or something like that to see what it looks like.
Because I think we were hitting Zarvin right around 8:45, and it's like, what?
Yeah, that's when you check the forecast right before you leave, and all of a sudden there's a chance for storms that wasn't there before. You go, oh, uh-oh.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, the difference between a shelf and a wall cloud, wall go all the way up though, right? Is that, I'm familiar with Oklahoma,
Yeah,
we have
yeah.
lots of wall clouds.
So the shelf cloud is usually on the front of the storm.
Correct.
So the rain is pushing that shelf cloud forward, the wind is pushing that shelf cloud
Sometimes
forward.
they look like they're rolling.
Yeah, it can be called roll clouds, things
Yeah.
like that.
Seen
The
a lot of
wall
those.
cloud has the rain kind of ahead of it. It's
Yeah.
at the back of the storm.
Okay.
They do look very similar.
Sure, okay.
And almost every thunderstorm, we get a shelf cloud that gets called in as a wall cloud. You just kind of learn where it is in the storm, and that's the best way to tell the difference.
There's a head of rain there behind the rain.
A question for my education here. I started riding this year with some of these guys, and some of them are pretty crazy. And they ride during the winter time.
Yeah.
So, are there times of the year that we are more susceptible or lightning? In the winter, it doesn't seem to be much, my observation. So, are there seasons of lightning?
We can have lightning any time of the year, but it's definitely more common in March, April, May, June, when we have our severe weather season. But we have frequent thunderstorms all spring, summer, and fall long. So the only time we don't have frequent thunderstorms is in the winter.
Yeah, I think that's one of the hardest things when you're out there riding is those popcorn storms that all of a sudden, because I've been on rides, they'll pop up out of nowhere, like over you, and they'll dump, you get some lightning, and then they're gone.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't roll anywhere, they're just like there.
Yeah. And that's always tough, because you like the forecast, you go radar, there's nothing there. So what happens then? Well, what we did was this guy opened up his garage and let us all pile on in.
Wow.
And get out of the storm. There was probably 50 of us hanging out in his garage for about an hour and a half while we waited for the storm to roll by.
I don't see a beer fridge.
Yeah, what's that? Must not have been very hospitable.
Yeah. So the best thing you can do is find somewhere to get inside, but that's not always going to be possible. So if you are caught outside, staying on your bike's not going to help you at all, because there's this idea that being in a car, that the tires protect you, being on your bike, well, maybe that rubber on the tires is going to protect you. If you think about it, that lightning is jumping thousands of feet from the cloud to the ground. It doesn't care about 2 inches of rubber. It's just going to go right on through you.
So what I hear you saying, David, is always ride with somebody that's taller than you.
Everybody else with a bicycle flag over there.
You know, Dan, that day that Dan got hit, he was on the Keystone, and there's high wire towers above the Keystone. That what surprised us all is that it didn't take the route of the wires and the
Those only
all of that. Yeah.
Those only provide a zone of protection.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, it's 35 degrees down on either side.
Oh.
If you're beyond that zone from the height, I worked for the power company. That's
You can
so
hear
basically.
those cables crackling.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Well, that's
It's
high
like
humidity.
Right.
But
So
that's
are you
static.
saying there's a zone of protection underneath?
Yes, that's why around in the Midwest, in the mountains, they don't do it, but in the Midwest, you have a shield wire typically above your transmission and distribution lines. It's always above the actual conductors. That's done, it provides, like I said, a cone of protection from that conductor down about 35 degrees either side down to the ground.
Mm.
So it will generally protect the electrical conductors from getting hit and blowing up all the power company's equipment in your house.
So what that's doing
So if
is
you're outside of that cone or zone, you nothing, you don't get any protection.
there's pieces of metal on the top that help to dissipate the static charge that tries to build up on those tall objects. You don't have that on you, so you don't necessarily
And also
have
there's
that.
either the metal tower for transmission towers is conducting it to the
Yeah.
ground. On wooden poles, you'll see an additional copper lead that goes all the way up to the shield wire, and it goes to a copper plate that's attached to the bottom of the pole, and that's buried 3 foot under.
Kind of a ground there.
That provides a ground. But typical residential area overhead is only 30 foot. So if you take 30 degrees out from 30 foot, you're maybe getting 20 foot of protection on either side of that.
And that's what surprised us about Dan that day, is that he was on a recumbent. He was even the lowest bike of all of us too. So.
And sometimes,
I was just told that he was riding back himself, so he was the tallest.
Yeah, that's probably true too.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
also had a very chrome-colored helmet.
Yeah.
I don't know if that had
Yeah.
any effect.
Yeah.
so when you think about the tallest object in an area, you're probably thinking about everything that you can see around you. But that's not what the electric charge is thinking about. It's thinking about the tallest object right here. And that's, right now, that's me. Over there, he's the tallest object over there. So if the charge is stronger over there, it's gonna go up him, even though I'm standing taller than he is right now. So it's wherever that charge is building up, wherever that tallest object is, that's what the lightning is going to go for, unless there's something to dissipate that charge, which we don't naturally have a way to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Wow.
also about 40% of those lightning strikes are ground to cloud strikes rather than cloud
Yeah.
to ground strikes. They've done slow motion studies on it. Most of your lightning strikes is a combination of a discharge feeler coming up from objects on the ground
Yeah.
and feelers coming down from the clouds, and when they hit, then you get the actual lightning strike.
That was one of the videos that didn't work, that was showing the lightning traveling up and
That's
down
why
and meeting, and then you
sometimes
see the bright.
you either smell ozone or you feel
Yeah.
that tingle on your skin when lightning is
Take
near.
videos of their hair standing up.
You don't
Well,
have
yeah.
to worry about that.
The point being, that's probably a ground to cloud feeler
Yeah.
coming up through you. If you feel that or smell that ozone, that's when you pretty much want to dive on the ground, because
Yeah. So if you can't get inside somewhere, during severe weather, we say don't go underneath the bridges because the wind accelerates under the bridge. But if it's just a lightning storm, you can use one of the bridges to go under, or something like. If you have nothing, then
You're dead.
the best thing you can do is just get as low as you can. And so if you can, you kind of get down and you crouch and you just roll up on your toes, put your feet close together, because if lightning strikes near you, that charge can still travel through the ground a few dozen feet, and if there's a large difference in the charge from one side of you to the other, it's going to travel through you and still shock you. So the closer your feet are together, the less of that difference will be.
But you need to be up on your toes.
just want to have your feet together.
Yeah.
Make yourself as small as
Practice that,
possible.
Bonnie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, hopefully you don't have to sit here for a long time.
So do you get away from your bike?
You don't have to.
Okay.
There's lightning. Supposedly is attracted to metal, but lightning just goes towards whatever's the tallest object. It doesn't care if it's metal, wood, plastic, whatever it is. Of course, after the storm, you want to watch out for any post-storm hazards that might have
Debris.
happened, like
Yeah.
debris, trees, things like that. And want to briefly touch on anything else that you might see in a thunderstorm or the weather that you're out there, trying to avoid. So this is another reason that you want to avoid riding through thunderstorms.
Hail.
The storm that we had on the Bike MS ride last fall, some people decided that they didn't want to stop when the course got closed. And they rode through some hail about that size, and they ended up with bruises on their arms and their legs. Thankfully, they had helmets on, but I imagine that was not a fun experience.
gosh.
So, when you see that thunderstorm, coming at you, it's not just the lightning that you're trying to get to shelter from, because you can end up with stuff like that, and when that's falling, that's going to hurt you pretty good.
But after that hits you, at least you're
So
on the ground.
there's
you
a
won't
question
get hit by
about
lightning.
wall cloud
Knock you
versus
out.
shelf cloud. That's shelf cloud. This is a wall cloud. Doesn't look all that different, does it? But here's how you tell the difference. It's spinning.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And then tornado.
Woo.
That's from Lincoln a few years ago.
Wow.
And
I was down there for that.
This is what it looked like from the ground.
That's a great video.
Where it takes out the
Yeah.
chicken shack.
Yep.
Yeah. That was a good place.
Yeah.
It was.
I've seen that back in 1976.
There's that one car or pickup.
The chicken still manages to stand up.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah, all those people driving around. Get out of there.
that chicken just,
Yeah.
Chickens can't fly.
wow.
This is actually a tornado that I videotaped out in Kansas. It was out near Lyons, Kansas. Very good ways away from that, but it was it ended up being rated an EF4 tornado. So the one and only time I've been storm chasing, we saw that, and I was like, okay, it's good.
Now I can say I did it.
Something else that you may encounter in Nebraska, especially if we keep getting drought conditions, this dust storm. The term is habuk, which comes from, I believe it's the Middle East. Yeah.
I've seen that in Arizona.
Yeah.
Yeah,
This is last year we had pretty good dust storm kicked up. It was kicked up by a thunderstorm, but you can see that wall of dust. I think this was out near Columbus, and just rolling it across the landscape.
Good Lord. Wow.
Situation here is you definitely want to get inside, because being outside in that, you're going to be breathing in all that stuff, and that's not ideal. Or you end up with almost no visibility because of the high wind and the dust blowing around. That's something I have not experienced. And hopefully we don't have too many more of those around here. As long as the rain keeps coming, it shouldn't be too much of a big deal, hopefully this year. And something else that doesn't necessarily isn't an immediate danger. It's not going to hurt you physically, but if you're out riding and you encounter some dense fog, and you're just like in a car, it's low visibility, accidents, crashes go up. So hopefully you have something with high visibility on you, and if you can delay your ride, I would do that, because you get out in that dense fog and you have a car that can't see you.
Yeah.
The fog itself isn't dangerous, but that low visibility is.
Right.
And I always ask this to everybody I do a presentation for. What's the difference between a tornado watch and a tornado warning?
Do you have the picture with the taco ingredients?
I don't know that.
Yeah.
I should put that in there.
Yeah. The ingredients are warning, the watch is the whole taco.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Watch means the ingredients are there. The warning means that the tornado is been sighted or is likely, so you gotta take shelter. And that is pretty much it. Hopefully you learned something. If not,
The weather
that's
has
great.
shifted to where we don't have the real violent weather that we've had. I mean, I lived here in the 70s, and it was so much worse here then. I mean, the snow was worse, the tornadoes were frequent, and it was right in Omaha all the time. Now it's kind of
The Oma Dome.
Kansas.
Everything splits and goes around all the rain.
It has, yeah.
Yeah.
What are the there's a microburst. It's like a mini tornado that whipped through. We kind of whipped through town here before.
Yeah.
I've seen them different places I've been stationed in.
Like that derecho we had a couple years ago,
Straight
that was on the
lines.
trail.
Yeah,
That
Just
was
throws a whole
brutal.
bunch of stuff around and like a
The
dust devil.
yeah,
Weird.
microburst is that it's
Sometimes it rains really
pocket
hard,
of rain
like spots.
falls quickly and drags all the air with it, and then reaches 100 miles an hour when it hits the ground.
Yeah, takes out a lot of
Yeah.
fences.
They had one on base. Here.
Anybody have any questions for him?
Yeah, anything that was confusing, anything that you need me to clarify, or anything else you want to know?
I guess we need to know when you're riding.
Yeah.
Put it on Slack.
What do you think of the portable lightning detectors?
I've never actually used one.
I've used, the reason I ask, I just looked one up, actually I just bought one on Amazon. I've used them for photography. If you're trying to take pictures of lightning, you have to have your camera on bulb, and preferably right before the lightning goes off. So they make a little lightning detector that fits on your hot shoe, and those things seem to be pretty damn accurate.
Yeah, I've never actually used one, but I do know that for the most part they work pretty well. I know a lot of weather stations can have them as part of their, like, weather stations, I mean, like the backyard
Mine has
temperature.
one.
sensor and stuff like that can have those built in. Usually they're reasonably accurate, yeah.
Yeah, this one, he has this, like, you clip it on your belt or
About the
something,
size of
and
a pager,
Yeah,
like $40.
it's like a pager, and it
Yeah.
alerts you if there's,
when I worked at a pool in Kansas City, we had one like that. And
Yeah, a lot of golf courses and soccer complexes.
The other
have
thing.
those.
do they?
Um,
Yeah.
Interesting.
So part of this, that trail everybody uses goes by a couple of golf courses. And I've personally experienced a couple of golf courses when they have a lightning alarm on there.
The horn blows.
The horn blows,
Yeah.
they'll
Right,
kick
right,
everybody off
right.
the golf course for half an hour or whatever it is. So I guess that, if you hear one of those when you're riding by,
The strike that hit Dan, I mean, we were on the golf course just fixing to tee off when it hit. And right after that, they blew the horn. By then, it's too late,
Right, yeah.
you know?
Yeah,
And we went inside as soon as that lightning strike hit.
That's such a freak accident for sure.
yeah, it's really hard because there's no real absolute when it comes to what causes a certain thing in weather. There's a whole range of conditions where you can get lightning. For the most part, you're gonna see lightning and, you know, stronger storms with heavy rain and all that stuff, but you can have snowstorms that have lightning in them. It's pretty rare, but anytime you have a lot of violent motion in the clouds, you build up that static charge and you can get lightning. And unfortunately, you know, sometimes the sky is just a matte gray, and you can't really say that's where the storm is, and that's when you have to, you know, be aware of the forecast and be able to check on
Radar,
the conditions
yeah.
and check on the radar.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of my telltale signs is when I'm out there, you can see storms coming in, and if it's just that nice green color, there've been a couple of those, I'm like, we gotta get back. They're like, why? Because we were up in the monument over at Council Bluffs, and I saw this green thing over the horizon. I said, we gotta get back. And we just pulled in, but we were out of it. It just rain, hail.
Yeah.
It was,
Yeah.
When you guys talk about the European
Model.
Yeah. The European model, American model, all the different computer models.
Yeah.
Those are satellite, right?
Those are
Different algorithms.
supercomputers.
Supercomputers.
Yeah,
okay.
algorithm supercomputers that are running and crunching all the data. There's European is in Germany, I think, then GFS is housed in Virginia. The Global Forecast System is what it's called. The European Center for Medium Range Weather Forecasting, the ECMWF, is the European model. So
Sometimes they're radically different.
yes, yeah, they are.
Is one more accurate than the other, or is it just depend, or?
Some people claim one model is more accurate than the other, but they all have their
There's
good
a guy from
days.
the Weather Channel, every time we get a big storm, if you see one plane going.
So it's like-
you know,
So it's like tubeless
Jim
and
Cantor.
See him on the plane coming all along.
Word comes here, it goes north.
Yeah, if you see him on the plane, you know.
This is what the European computer model looks like when I'm looking at it.
Oh, goodness.
Well, let's thank
Thank you.
David for coming and spending some time with us. Thank you very much.
This is my forecast page. This is what I go to when I start building the forecast every day.
Yikes.
Which one do you use? Do you use the American or the European? Or both?
So the best method is to look at all of them.
And then see what the commonality is?
See what the differences is, see what the similarities are, see what the trends have been. And then
Anything lining up? Yeah.
there's something called the national blend of models, which takes all those together and gives you an average. And they've been kind of experimenting with that, and it kind of gives you a better starting point. It's not necessarily going to be an accurate forecast, but it gives you a good starting point.
So you wind it down to 2 and then grab a quarter.
I feel like I'm looking at something secret right now.
So this is one of my favorite charts right here. It's kind of weird. But what this is each line is one run of the computer model. Each column is a day. So you can see as each run comes in, what the trend has been. So for a while, it looked like Thursday was going to be in the 70s, and then the most recent computer model runs said, oh, never mind, it's going to be in the 50s. So we've had to trend that forecast for Thursday downward and downward and downward, because it initially was coming in with 70s in the computer model, and then it went down in the 50s.
Wow.
That's kind of like the Crane Trust 2 weeks ago. It was supposed to be 60s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got to the 20s in the morning and snow.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Anybody